Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. Like me, you've probably been out over the years to various functions or nights out. It could be a pub or a club, a wedding, or some place where there's some music provided by a solo artist. Well, most certainly the artist was probably very good, and in some cases you may consider them to be as good or if not better than a well-known artist. You might also ask yourself, well, if that's the case, why haven't they made it? Why haven't they had their lucky break and reached the dizzy heights of stardom? Well, on the show to answer that question, I'm joined by a man who, in his own words, has spent 30 years on the bottom rung of the showbiz ladder. His name is Dave Dawson, and today he's a full-time care home musician, author, and he just brought out his latest book entitled Pop Idol, 30 Years on the Road as a Professional Singer. Hello and welcome to the show, Dave.
That's a lovely praise, my friend. I'm so pleased. Thank you so much.
Well, I have to say I nicked it a little bit from some of your stuff that you sent me, so thanks.
That's all right. Good. Yeah, loved it.
Thanks for coming on the show. Great to have you on. You're based in Salisbury in Wiltshire in England, I understand.
Originally from London, originally from Acton and Ruislip. I've lived here for about 7 years. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Now, Dave, before we talk about your life and work as a professional musician, please could you just tell us a bit about yourself and growing up and how you sort of started getting into music?
Okay, well that's in the book actually, because it's a freak thing because we don't know, because we didn't have a record player in the house. There was no interest in music in the family whatsoever. I come from a family that was fanatical about Brentford Football Club, and there was no connection at all to music. The only thing we can trace back is that my dad's brother was a founding member of The Who in 1961 or 1962. Right. Yeah, he was. They were called the Detours, and they were just this jobbing 50s Cliff Richard rock and roll covers band. My uncle was on vocals, Roger was on guitar, Pete was on guitar, John Entwistle was on bass, and a guy called Dougie Sandon was on the drums. And my uncle left in 1962, and I've said to him since, do you ever regret leaving? And he said no, because it had to be those four people, that explosive chemistry between those four people. I don't know where my obsession, and that's what it is, I don't know where my obsession for music came from. It's just really weird.
When did you discover that you had a voice, and did you learn the guitar first or piano first? How tell us about how you sort of started playing.
I joined the old cliche of winning the school talent show, just barely playing a song that you barely know, and it was my generation, funnily enough. So when I was 14, the school band, we got together and we won a talent show. And after that, we were mentored by this guy called Ron Faulkner, who was the guitarist's dad. And he was a veteran of the 60s club circuit. And he mentored us, and he gave us lots of gigs on the working men's club circuit. And there was this great novelty of kids that young doing 60s songs. So I was doing BVs. I always knew I had a bit of a voice.
Backing vocals.
Yeah, but I learned guitar from listening to like Kiss records and Ritchie Blackmore records, and sort of instilling that into the 60s stuff. But when I left the 60s band when I was 18, I then joined an indie band, one of those thousands of bands that was trying to make it on the indie circuit in the 90s when Britpop was coming through just after Baggy and Manchester. And I was losing my voice a lot because, as you probably know, any band that's trying to make it, you latch on to whatever's going on at the time. So we had a Nirvana phase and my voice was cracking. And I went to a singing teacher called Keir Watson, who's, I'm devastated to say, passed away a couple of months ago. And he taught me operatically in a way that, even though I didn't sing as an opera singer, he said, if I teach you the opera techniques, you can adapt your voice to anything. And that was like...
So did that mean that you sort of were caring for your vocal cords at the same time, rather than just shouting?
Yeah, well, I had to, because it was a necessity, because I was screaming myself hoarse at gigs because I wasn't using my voice properly. As soon as Keir taught me the techniques of singing, I mean, his favourite singers, weirdly enough, I said to him when he was about, I said, really, I said, who are your favourite singers? He said, well, for diction and phrasing and power, it's probably Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys and John Lydon. And he says he's convinced that John Lydon had training, or if he didn't, he's a natural born singer.
Yeah. I saw Public Image about 7 years ago. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, still going strong and a
Yeah.
passionate artist. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Oh, so that's good to hear how you sort of develop your voice from there. And for those that, I mean, I guess if you're, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but if you're on the bottom rung of the music ladder,
Yeah.
People but won't have heard you outside of where you play. So what type of voice have you got? Who do you sound like?
Oh, okay. Well, that's really interesting because when I left the band, I was kicked out of the band after I was in the band for 10 years. And basically, after 10 years of playing the toilet circuit and getting nowhere, I'd had enough. So the band kicked me out, which was justifiable because I'd lost all interest. But I wanted to still be in music. And I was contemplating my next move. And I used to listen to, in the car, I'd listen to prog and thrash. That's my thing. I love Metallica and I love new wave of British heavy metal, but I love Cardiacs and Genesis and Yes. But all that stuff was too high to sing in the car. So I was always in the car thinking, what will I do next in my life? And my auntie Maureen had bought me a CD of Songs for Swinging Lovers by Frank Sinatra, and I'd often play that in the car and sing along to it as I was meditating on my next move. And then I realised, hold on, I can hit every single note, and that because of the way Keels taught me, because I've got a natural bassy baritone voice. I sound like Matt Monro and Scott Walker. And then I thought, God, I'm thinking about what to do next. This is it. So, but naturally, if I were to sing without sort of doing a vocal impression, I think I'd probably sound like somebody like Dave Kahan's probably my most natural person that I sound like, or Neil Hanna from Divine Comedy. I mean, when I sing in my when I sing in my normal voice, it's pretty much that. Yeah,
sort of baritone. Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, about voices? Because I mean, you listen to somebody like Don Henley from the Eagles talk. And he's got a reasonably deep voice, and you think, oh, he's probably got it. But actually, when you hear him sing, he can get very high.
Yeah,
so I don't know whether you agree with me or not, but I don't know whether you can actually tell what somebody's singing voice is just by listening to them talk, or can you?
Well, you can with some. I mean, a prime example to counter that would be Justin Hawkins. He sounds nothing like it. What he sings like when he talks. But if you listen to like Tim Smith from Cardiacs, or you listen to Andy Partridge from XTC, or you listen to Morrissey talking, you can pretty much nail what they're going to sound like. But it's the thing is, sometimes if I've got a stinking cold, I can still sing because you're using a different part of the voice when you're singing to what you're doing when you're talking. So I don't think you can always second guess what a singer's going to sound like based on what they're talking like in interviews.
Yeah. So you're now a solo performer.
Yeah.
It's not all Frank Sinatra that you do, though, is it?
Oh no. What happened was I started as a crooner. I started doing Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole and Matt Monro and Dean Martin, but there wasn't enough work. So I spoke to I had a ton of agents, and they were all complaining, saying, I've got a stack of work that I can't fill, but a load of singers like you complaining there's not enough. And I said, well, why is there a chasm between? And the agents would say to me, if you go into a bar and you're just a singer, even if you're trained and a professional and you're not reading the words, you're not really seen as a proper musician. Okay. So I thought, well, I'll just wheel my guitar out again. And within 2 weeks, my diary was absolutely chocker full. So I had a lovely agent called Dawn Judd, who we lost a couple of years ago, and she was this straight-talking, amazing, formidable woman. And I said to her, Dawn, I'm gonna incorporate the guitar into my act now. What style of music do I have to learn in order to maximize my income as a performer? And she said, that's easy, everything. Okay, so I had to. I cherry picked like 20 songs from disparate genres like Irish ska, rock and roll, heavy rock, country and western, reggae, crooning, and that's how I did it. And that's how I got this all-rounder reputation on the circuit.
So you've always been dedicated to want to play music. Have you had any other sort of careers as well, or on the side as you've been as a musician, or not? Or has it just been playing music all the way, the whole journey?
Well, I had when I was in the day job, but when I was in the indie band trying to make it, because we were making no money, I did like this day job that I couldn't wait to ditch. But
Yeah.
for constantly since about 1998, I've been full time just as a musician and singer, and that's getting your own gigs, doing the invoicing, working through getting gigs by myself and working through working with it, because it is a business. It's a sales job. It's a sales job as well.
Yeah.
You have to pitch yourself to new venues and things like that. So this has been consistently. Yeah.
We'll talk about your work as a care home musician, because I think that's really interesting. But
Yeah.
when you were doing the solo stuff and traveling around the area, how far away would you do gigs?
Oh, I'd go as far as, geez, I mean, I lived in London, so I was going as far as Bradford. I mean, I was at Northampton You see, if you've got an agent that's based in Northampton, all the work's going to be in Northampton. I had an agent based in Datchet called Ray Gates, who I'm still friends with. So all my work around his way was Windsor, Staines, Stanwell, Ruislip. So I look at my diary now from 20 years ago, and like you're saying, Friday, based in London, Friday I'm in Luton, Saturday I'm in Windsor, because I was using the M1 and the M25 as my focal point, because once you got those motorways, the M25 branches you off into Essex, Kent, Middlesex, Hertfordshire, but I was working anywhere within a 150-mile radius.
Well, yeah. And how many gigs a week would you be doing?
Oh, just crazy. I mean, I'd be doing maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and maybe a Monday or Tuesday lunch or supper club for pensioners or for the. I work for the Jewish community a lot. I was working in synagogues doing my crooning. So and I double up. Sometimes you do a Thursday afternoon, then a Thursday evening. It was crazy. I was doing 6 to 7 gigs a week.
And did you ever get that feeling, say, on a Saturday afternoon, you think, oh, I've got a gig to do tonight. I could just happily just sit at home, watch the TV and have a drink?
Yeah. You're in this state of, mind you, it depends where you're going to be, because some gigs you do are called clock watches. So you're just getting in there, and I used to call it that. I had a London taxi circuit. Now, what I meant by that was you go on stage, you run the meter, and the passengers don't talk to you, because you're just basically background music, and you're looking at the clock thinking, right, another half an hour. Whereas with a good gig, I'd look in the diary and think, oh, I'm a so-and-so tonight. That's going to be brilliant. And then the adrenaline levels would kick in. So the trouble is with what you're saying is once you go to sleep, that's it. You've really got to keep going if you're working at that consistent level. Yeah.
I used to find with gigs, and I still do the odd one now, that the looking forward to it is if it's a good gig, a couple of days beforehand, you're really looking forward to it. And there's nothing like it, is there?
No, I've got one. I'm working in Dauncey today, which is 20 miles away in Devizes, and they welcome me with open arms. They're just as much friends as they are clients now, which is a beautiful position to be in. And when we finish this today, I'm straight in the car, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know what's coming. I know it's going to be great, And even if the voice isn't spot on, I can always wing it doing shadows covers, but they'd forgive me anything. A lot of my clients would forgive me anything, because we've got so much good stuff in the bank over the past few years, that they're just more like friends now.
So you must have accumulated hundreds of songs to be able to play. Thousands.
I've 4,000. My last count was 4,000. Yeah, but I've been doing it for 30 years. But the memory, the brain is like it's like a hard drive, in that they're all downloaded there. And what I find is that if I sing a song consistently, because you grow in and out of favourites, there's songs where I think, like 24 Hours from Tulsa, I sung that every gig for a year. and then then you get a new favourite. So what you find is if you do a song and you sing it 100 times over the space of a year, you can access that song 20 years later like that. It's all still in there. But if you do a song 3 times, okay, it's gone within a year. It's once it's embedded in there. Yeah, it's just the way it works. Because I don't use lyrics.
Then you have to redevelop the muscle memory, I suppose, to get it back again.
Yeah, what you do there? Once you just get a few keywords from each lyric line, you go, oh yeah, I remember that now. But I don't like watching singers that use lyric sheets. I don't think it's professional. I don't think it's engaging. I think it's one step away from karaoke, really. So I make sure that if I don't know a song, I don't sing it.
That was going to be my next question, actually. That was going to be my next question. Was with all those songs, do you have a lyric sheet in front of you? But obviously,
no,
you don't.
Absolutely, that's not. I'd rather say, or if it's somebody's birthday and they insist on a song that I barely know, I'll just get my Fender Stratocaster and I'll strum along and sing one verse or one chorus.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than singing a guitar an act bluffing it.
Do you know what? I couldn't agree more. I don't know how a singer can engage with an audience if they're looking at something else.
Well, especially it's stagecraft, and you can't learn it. I've watched singers, and they're just watching the audience like a hawk, looking for how the next interaction can build into their act. And I can't see how you can do that if you've got your eyes on a bit of paper or a screen. So I agree.
Do you tell jokes at all? Do you do other things other than sort of sing and play?
Oh yeah, I totally, especially in the care homes. And this is, but I've learnt this from the clubs, from doing the working men's and the British Legions. You develop this innate primal sixth sense of being able to react to what's happening in the room, and maybe pulling on the joke that you told 5 years ago when the same thing happened, or just reacting to it. And the thing with the care homes is that I've done a couple of care homes where people have wandered in and saying, you must have been playing this place for years. And I go, it's the first time I've played here, because I engage with the audience and I find out their names before I do a little bit of reconnaissance, really. Before I start, I'll either listen to the jukebox and see what they're playing there, or I'll say to the residents, where are you from? What music did you listen to as you were growing up? And I'm very much of the mindset that if somebody's 85 now or 90, they didn't stop listening to music when they were 15. So you can still get away with doing like your 60s and 70s because they was only in their 50s and 60s. So I find out what their names are and I get their favourite songs, and then I'll just build that in and then upload it when I do the gig.
Yeah, and what made you, just before we talk about the book, what made you decide to start doing some work in the care homes, Dave?
It was it was an accident and a mistake, and to my utter shame, I was doing like hotels, nightclubs, restaurants, Masonic functions, pubs, clubs. I had a really strong rep. But one day somebody phoned me and they said, Dave, we saw you last night at that birthday party. We'd love for you to come in and entertain our residents. And my initial reaction was one of, is my career that much on the skids now? Am I that bad that I'm only seen as good enough to entertain an old folks who don't know what day it is? And it's a terrible attitude to have. And I turned the gig down with respect. And I thought, if anyone finds out I'm doing care homes, that's my career done. And then a couple of weeks later, it was meant to be, because an agent phoned up and said, Dave, will you do us a favour? I've got a care home. The family kind of know you. They're really, really pushing for me to get you. And I went, oh, God, okay. So I said, I'll do one as a favour to you, Tony, but that's it. Just don't tell anyone. And then before I did the gig, I was thinking, should it be like, side by side in Tipperary? And then I thought, well, I'll do some research. So I thought, well, give me some 60s and 70s. And I did that first gig and I was dreading doing it. And then as soon as I saw the interaction and the fact that the tunes seemed to tap them on the shoulder like old friends, I come home and I said to my wife or my partner, that's it. I'm not going to actively look at new work now. I'll wait for these corporate gigs and the club gigs to like be done. But from now on, that's my focus. I'm just doing care homes, and I got my evenings back.
That's yeah. Oh, you get your evenings back, and you're actually doing yeah. That's the real reason. No, I'm sure that's great, but I think also the fact that you're actually contributing to people's mental health and everything at the latter stages of their life must be quite rewarding for you.
Well, it's rewarding for me as well, because I've got a little bit at the front of the book where at my first ever gig, I was working with a vocal impressionist who absolutely blew me away. And he said to me he said, "Are you working here tonight, son?" And I could barely talk to him because he was so good. I said, "Yeah, I'm doing a little Sinatra." I could barely look at him, and he said, "Look at me, lad." He said, "Look at me, lad." He said, "You've got that spark in your eye. You keep that spark in your eye as long as you can. Don't you let the circuit kick it out of you." And then, because of the experiences I had, had some bad experiences in my 20 years as a circuit singer, that glow was starting to go. Okay, so when I got the care homes, an activity coordinator said to me, "What you do is jump leads. It's like invigoration, it's jump leads for the residents." And I said, "Well, it's jump leads for me too, because I was probably just about to jack this job in." So it's amazing to see the residents being invigorated, but some of them you've only got for an hour, because I've got one lady said to me after a gig, straight after the gig, she says, "Come here, David," and she held my hand. She goes, "I will never forget what you've just done for me. You sang all my favourite songs." And I went to the car with a really lovely feeling, and I came back for another bit of kit. And she said, she saw me in my stage clothes. She goes, "Oh, have we got music today?" So it was gone, but I had her for that hour.
Yeah, that present time she was enjoying it, and that's a really marvelous thing to. So that almost sort of says it's all worth it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When I used to do the circuit, I used to look at the diary and go, "Oh God, I'm there tonight." But just thinking of money. I haven't got a gig in my diary now where I look at it and think that. Every gig I look at, I thought, "Oh great, I'm going to see Vicky today," or "I'm going to see." It's just like a really friendly circuit.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really lovely story. Right. So the book. This is your fifth book, isn't it?
It is. Yes. Yeah.
And the other books, if you could just tell listeners a little bit about the other books, because this latest one, Pop Idol, is an autobiography, isn't it?
It's a memoir, but it's also like an instruction handbook, really. It tells you, it's a handbook. I've sent it to a few rock stars that I know from my first books, and they say that this is really a handbook with some of it for what to look out for with dodgy agents and situations you're going to get into. My first books were a little family thing where what we would do was we'd write, I mean, you'd probably identify with this. We would write ridiculous letters to rock, pop, punk, prog stars, big people, Nick Kershaw, Kim Wilde, Deep Purple, really big names. And we would write them letters. We'd act as like internal audit, like a compliance department. We'd write letters deliberately misunderstanding something in their lyrics or picking up on something which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like "Dear Mr. Le Bon, why are you isolating starvation to wild dogs? Why can't it be peckish like the panda rather than hungry like the wolf?" And then we'd invite them, and we would invite them to write back in character to us in character, and we published the response, the combat, if you like, and we did it over 4 books. So that's what we did. And then, so the first bit was like a lot of 80s stars, like I said, Howard Jones, and we had Rick Wakeman in there, and it was a mix of punk. And then we did another one, and we did that through a major publisher. We did that through Unbound. That was even bigger names. We've got the B-52s in there, and they'd all play along because they like the concept. And then the third one I did was a punk book. And then the fourth one I did was like C86 Britpop indie. And so that whole program, that whole episode thing took 10. We've got 4 books there, and it's 10 years work. But what I did with Pop Idol was back in December. When you've got a cupboard full of old like ThinkPads and old knackered old laptops you're about to take to the dump. I've got this old laptop. I've got this laptop thinking, is that working? Of course it's not working. It's been in the cupboard. So anyway, I fired it up and I found an old manuscript, about my experience as a singer. But at that time, I'd only been working for 10 years. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
in like, but at that time, I thought it was a swan song because I thought the Smoking Man was going to kill my circuit. So I looked at what I'd written and thought, well, hold on, I've got 20 years on top now. So I just like revisited the manuscript and I had it written in 4 months. So I only had the idea. I had the idea in December, and it's out now. But that's the advantage of being a self-published author.
Yeah. How do you find the writing process?
Well, when I was doing the pop star books, that was really weird because we would only write a letter to a pop star if we got the green light. There was no trickery involved. I'd say to an
No.
artist, look, we've got this little thing. We're just pretending to be that mental bloke backstage that tells you about your songs, and so it was all teed up. So I wouldn't write a letter until I got a green light. So the writing
Yeah.
process there was based on I'm not going to write a letter. So sometimes you'd be sitting around for 2 weeks, and then 4 pop stars will come back and say, "Yes, I love this. Let's do it." And then you're constantly busy for another 2 weeks writing. But with the pop idol book, I found it obviously cathartic. Um, and then I was thinking, well, how much of this? Like, one of my best friends is Bruce Thomas from The Attractions, and I said to him, "Look, Bruce, I've got some really gritty stuff in this book. Some of it's really brutal because I had a stalker, and I've had some terrible things happen to me, as I'm sure other acts have had." And he said to me, "Don't sugarcoat it, because if you sugarcoat it and somebody else goes into the circuit and thinks it's all sunshine and lollipops, they're not going to thank you. So just make it brutal, make it as visceral as you can." And he said, "I also don't like the fact that you've starred out the swear words. You don't star out the swear words in real life. That's what happened. So you've got to swear in the book as well." So it came out in a flow.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. And I've listened to and read some of your interviews over the past few weeks about that, and there's some fantastic stories there. Obviously, we can't go through the whole book because of time, but just
That's
sort
all
of
right.
taking some themes, for example. You mentioned you had a stalker there. I mean, that's a scary. You just had one
Yes,
stalker, have you, Dave?
I'm not going to. I can't. Well, that was that bad. Yes, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
go into detail. But she was where you used to live. I'm not going to say any more
Oh,
than
okay.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
But
No.
I've had like you get gigs where you absolutely die a death, and you look back and you think, God, could I have changed anything there? There's little stories in there. What I say is, sometimes no matter how good your performance is, you will lose that gig, and it's got nothing to do with what you did. Like I had one in Kent where I got ditched by a pub after 5 years of like a good client relationship. I used to have great gigs in there, and one day I couldn't get in there again. And I was doing postmortems thinking, what did I do wrong? I found out years later that a local there had written under several different aliases letters of complaint to the pub saying, if you get that bloke back again, I'm going to make sure nobody else comes to the pub. Da 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 da. And I thought, well, what's he got against me? I'm not. It turned out that he had asked out my girlfriend in front of me, okay, when I was performing, and she rebuffed him so angrily that he had to create a situation where he would never see her again, okay, and to do that he had to get me cancelled from the pub. And I found that out years later, and you think
Wow.
there's nothing like that. There's nothing. That's nothing to do with how I performed.
No.
But I've got stuff
No.
in there. I've got stuff in there about stuff to look at as well. I had an agent that booked me when I first started out. He saw me in a nightclub and he said, "Listen, you're crooning stuff, and because you're young and good looking, which I was at the time, if you do your crooning Sinatra, I can book you into gilt-edged 5-star high value clients like big golf clubs, big hotels." And I said, "This is great. That's exactly what I want." And he said, "The only thing is you never, ever, ever discuss money. Never discuss money with the client. You do not do it with gilt-edged clients. It's unprofessional. What I'll do, you do the gig and I'll send you a check after." But all of his gigs were like 150. So, they're on a tight budget. All of his gigs were paying £1, £150, and then I would not get asked back to any of them. And I was thinking, firstly, why am I only getting 150? And secondly, I did 3 encores in that place. Why have I never gone back? And then one time I got to this golf club, again, did a storming gig, and the treasurer didn't know about this rule about not talking about money. And he called
Yeah.
me into the office. He said, listen, Dave, I'm really so sorry to tell you, we can't have you back. And I went, why? He goes, because you're far too expensive. And he gave me this envelope, and it was so fat, he couldn't even put the flat down. And I got to the car, there was 600 quid in there. And then I worked out very quickly that this agent was creaming off 450, and he'd been doing it for months. So I phoned him up and I said, listen, I said, just to let you know, the game's up. I know what you've been doing. I'm keeping this extra 450 as back payment, and I'm also going to go into all of your venues and tell them that I'm prepared to earn them for £150. And if you don't like it, you can sue me. And he said to me, I bloody well will. And I said in the book, he bloody well didn't. So there's little tricks like that. There's little tricks like that I'm sure these tricks are still being pulled for new artists going in that don't know the pitfalls. So I'm hoping that sort of thing, and I said in the book, if you do a gig like that and no money's discussed, just be really careful, just do what you can to make sure you're not being turned over. But there's other things, like I did a gig, I had this gig where a client literally died when I was singing, okay? And it was a lunch club, I think, literally died, and there was an undertaker there. This is unbelievable. And she was dead. There was a paramedic there, and he said, unfortunately, we've lost her. And there was an off-duty undertaker there, and he said, look, let's just cut out the middleman. I'll take her straight to my chapel arrest. It's a new client. And all sorts of protocols were probably not fulfilled, but that's what he did. He took this new customer straight to his chapel arrest. And at the end of the gig, he said to me, Dave, are you Dave? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, please tell me you're playing here again. And I wasn't sure if he liked my act or if I was just good for the business.
You couldn't write that, could you? You couldn't make that up.
This is the beauty of it. I've sent this book to rock stars that I am fortunate enough to know from my first 4 books, and they're going, you could not make, if you tried to write this, you could not make it up. And I said, that's because it's true. And the stuff you get, I did a gig once, and the contract said you've got to play 60s backing music in the break. And so what I did, because I'm tight, I let Spotify run, and I recorded like an hour's worth of music onto my mini disc, but I had the volume down. And then because I'm tight, I didn't realise that I'd gone for the Spotify option with ads. Okay, I didn't know. So what I did in my break, I played this 60s compilation, and this lady tripped up on somebody's spilt drink, and she fell on the floor, and she'd done her back in. And at that exact moment, the 60s track stopped, and then this advert come in, and it said, have you had an accident that's not your fault? Call injury lawyers. And she's on the floor going, get a pen! Somebody get a pen! And again, you couldn't make it up.
No,
so it is black humour, but I couldn't resist it. Yeah.
No, it sounds fantastic. As I say, I can't wait to read the book. What advice would you give? I mean, I guess there's a lot of advice in this because it's, in quotes, a handbook. But what advice would you give anybody who was thinking about getting on the circuit?
Do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you want to be famous. Okay. I love what Elton John said. He said, everyone talks about a love for the music and a passion for what they're doing. Unless you've trundled up the M1, for a couple of years, up and down the M1, loading your gear in the back of a van, you haven't really got the passion. Make sure you do it for the right reason, because the circuit will offer challenges for you. But please don't see it as a passport to getting famous really quickly. Do it because you love music, and do it on the basis that some pop stars get famous and they burn bright for 2 years. What you're going to do possibly is glow for 30. That's what I say to people. So make sure you're doing it because you like doing music, but Don't do it as a looking towards an end game and part of a strategy. That's what I'd say.
No. I think we're all on our life journeys, aren't we? And this, what you're doing at the moment with the care homes, seems a really good journey to where you've gone, sort of thing.
It's a coda, really, and I think it's something. A lot of people see care home entertainment as like a little halfway house between their own living room, because we're playing in the residents' living rooms. They're seeing it as a halfway house between their living room and getting onto the pub and club circuit. So there is this stigma of like, well, that will do. Okay. And I see acts and I think, well, there's an element of that will do there, because they're thinking, well, these poor old dears don't know what day it is. But when I went into the care home circuit and other singers that I know have done it, that have had a grounding of 20 years in the clubs, in restaurants, etc., we go in there and the activities coordinators look at us and go, what the hell is going on? Because they've never seen stagecraft before. Okay. So we're employing all of the tactics that we used in the clubs, to a potentially hostile audience, and then going into the care homes, working to a very friendly audience and employing all of those same tactics. And there's not that many of us that are going in there with that 20-year grounding doing, the proper circuit. So it's beautiful to go into care homes and they go, geez, where have you, brilliant. And then they fill your diary up.
Yeah, that's great. Did you get, well, two questions really. Why is it some people get that lucky break and why don't others? So, for example, I mean, from what you say you're doing, I mean, it sounds fantastic, but why? What reasons are there that you haven't had your lucky break?
Well, it's the same as when I was in the indie band. I went through. I was one of my mentors when I was in the 60s band. When I was a kid. He said, "A musician's career is a living wage, nothing, and telephone numbers." And I said, what the hell does that mean? And he said to me, if you are working on the circuit, you'll make a living wage. If you're a megastar, you're going to be making millions, telephone numbers. In between, if you're doing original songs, trying to make it big, you get literally nothing. Okay, so I saw it when I was in the band, that there was bands getting big breaks. They were no better than the rest of us, but maybe they were on vogue with what was like obviously Suede. I love Suede, but David Bowie had this massive resurgence at the time. So the enemy journalists go, that sounds a bit like Bowie. So it could be it could be just luck. You're in the right place at the right time. But sometimes, I mean, certainly with singers that I know, like Maddie Hart, who in my opinion is one of the best British singers this country's produced, she never got discovered because we're too busy. We were so busy gigging, okay, that we couldn't go to the auditions or we couldn't get the breaks, or we think. In my case, the reason why the book is called Pop Idol is because I was discovered by this major so-called mover and shaker, and she said to me, I'm amazed you've not been discovered. Let's make that happen right now. And then she phoned me the next day saying, listen, send me your CD, send me this, send me that. Then 2 days later, she says, I have secured you a 45-minute audition with Simon Fuller. You don't get any bigger than that. And then but I said to her, yeah, but I've got a Friday, Saturday and 2 Sundays, and you're asking me to be in Birmingham Monday morning. I've got no voice left. She said to me, well, cancel your gigs. You don't mess about with people like this. You've got to go in fresh. And I was halfway up the M40, and she phoned me and she said, listen, Simon's had to go and pick up a gong from LA. He can't make it today. And I went, what? I'm halfway there. And then she said to me, but anyway, it's still very exciting. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I went, you know what I need to do? I need to go home and never speak to you again. And she said to me, you know what your trouble is, darling? You don't want to be a star. You're too lazy to be a star. And I said, that's it. Just call me Pop Idol. So what I'm saying there is that we get breaks, we get mucked about. And to this day, I'm not even sure if she knew Simon Fuller. She could have been just doing that just to keep me baited,
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah.
So you get you get like this bullshit radar, so a lot of us, the reason why we didn't make it is because we were just too busy, or something didn't smell right, and then you see singers like Alexandra Burke, who did make it through, and she worked with me a couple of times. She was lovely and she did make it. So don't go to a pub and think, well, because this bloke's not been on the telly, they're no good. There could be a multitude of reasons why they didn't make it through, and it still might happen.
Yeah. So when's the book coming out?
Well, it was supposed to come out on the 1st of May, but my local paper got hold of it, and then it got leaked through MSN News and Yahoo News. So I had to sort of rush it under the radar. So even though the official release date is the 1st of May, you can get it now, even though I've not really publicised it. And I've already sold 150 copies pre-release, and that's a pretty good portion, really. And the other thing is because I'm getting reviews from art like rock stars that I've sent it to, they're going, "Oh, this is just, we love it," because it's really resounding with musicians especially. So so the official date is next week, the 1st of May. Yeah,
excellent stuff. Well, where can people find out more about you, Dave?
Well, it's funny enough, I did a radio interview yesterday, and they go, "Where can we see you next?" I said, "Well, you can't, because they're all private gigs. Because I only do care homes and I only do private parties. So whereas 20 years ago I'd have leapt at that question and given you my whole. We call it the never-ending tour, because your tour dates just go on for years and years and years. So the answer is you can't come and see me at all unless you're related to a resident.
Well, it could be serendipity. I mean, if you've had it twice in 2 days and it's going out, around the world, maybe this is it.
Yeah, we'll see. In this business, you hold no expectations.
Have you got any Instagram or any other social media links?
Facebook. Yeah, it's Dave Dawson Entertainer. Find me on there under Facebook. You'll find me there. Yeah.
Well, we'll put that on the show notes. Dave, it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, and you.
Well, thank you. It's been interesting to learn so much more about the life of a professional musician and hear some of those great stories that I wouldn't otherwise have heard. A real eye-opener. My guest today has been Dave Dawson. Dave is a full-time care home musician, author, and he's just brought out his latest book entitled Pop Idol, 30 Years on the Road as a Professional Singer. Thank you for coming on the show, Dave.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.